Welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. Our beloved Nick Castellanos has signed with the San Diego Padres. So basically, it's just a league minimum contract. Now, this does benefit the Phillies in the sense of money because we do save $780,000. Because when you outright release a player, you're only on the hook for the entire contract if he doesn't sign somewhere else. So the Phillies will now only, and I say only with quotation marks, pay $19,220,000. So still a ton of dead money, but it had to be done. And this article is per AJ Casavell at MLB.com, just talking about Castellanos, the Padres, the fit. Where is he going to play? So he says Castellanos could start primarily at designated hitter with the outfield corners already set. But the Padres also envision getting him work at first base. A source said Castellanos worked a bit at first base last season in Philadelphia, but still hasn't made an appearance there in the big leagues. I don't know if that's true because I don't remember Castellanos doing any work at first base with the Philadelphia Phillies. I do know his agent put it out there that he's interested in playing first base. I think that was a move just so he can up his value anyway defensively because we all know what he was like in right field. He was terrible. Of course, he had those great sliding catches in the playoffs, but in all reality, and I don't want to take anything away from Nick Castellanos because I like him as a player, those catches wouldn't be diving catches for other right fielders. Just saying. He says, in any case, Castellanos will have to compete for at-bats coming off a poor season in Philadelphia, in which he batted .250 with the .694 OPS. For years, he's played right field almost exclusively. The Padres, of course, are set in right field with Fernando Tatis Jr. and Ramon Laureano remains in the projected starter in left field. Wherever Castellanos plays, at his bat is at least a major upgrade on the group of options that were vying for the final place on two of the opening day rosters. So essentially, is this a smart move for the San Diego Padres? I think it's obviously a smart move because you're paying him league minimum to where his upside is tremendous based on that salary. Of course, $20 million was an overpay, but if you're paying league minimum, it's almost a no risk, high reward kind of situation. Because if he struggles and if he continues to be a clubhouse cancer, they're just going to cut him and it's not even going to affect them financially. And then with Nick Castellanos, I mean, like, he has moments to where he can lead an entire Major League Baseball team with his bat for a week or two consecutively. We all know how Castellanos is. When he's hot, he's hot. When he's cold, he's cold. To where I love the move for San Diego. When he initially got released, I was thinking Miami. I always heard San Diego was in the picture. They needed a right-handed bat to where if an injury happens, you have a Major League player who's been a starter for his entire career. And with the Padres, they're going to be competing for the playoffs, right? To where if they get in and he's at DH for you, the thing about Nick Castellanos is he does come up in big playoff moments. Granted, he did only go 2 for 15 against the Dodgers, but those two hits were tremendously important. The first one was that double he poked off Blake Trident to make it 4-3. We're not going to talk about what happened afterwards. Similar to Game 4 when he hit the double, bringing in Max Kepler to give us a 1-0 lead, to where when the moment is the brightest, Nick Castellanos shines. So I really do like the move for San Diego because maybe he can rejuvenate his career. He did say about the Miami incident that we'll get into. He's going to learn from it. And I just can't imagine him going into a clubhouse based off what happened in Philadelphia with that same kind of demeanor because you hear all these reports and is it true? Is it not? I don't know. Matt Gelb is a respected reporter, but I really don't like when they name sources, anonymous sources, because it's like, if you're willing to speak on the situation, but you're not willing to put your name in front of it, I think that's soft. I think that's cowardism. But nevertheless, most of the stuff coming out and based on some of the answers Kyle Schwarber gave, it does seem like Nick Castellanos was a bigger problem than we initially were led to believe. And getting into the Kyle Schwarber media questions that he answered yesterday. So basically, they just asked him, what do you think of the situation, about his letter? And Kyle Schwarber says, it is what it is. And he goes in to say he wishes Nick nothing but the best. He enjoyed their 4 years, of course. They shared a lot of memories. They think he's a good guy. Wishing him nothing but the best and continuing to have those big playoff moments. But his first initial response was, it is what it is. I think is kind of eye-opening because there was, of course, rumors of certain players getting tired of Castellanos' antics, right? And Kyle Schwarber is the clubhouse leader, and he's a no-nonsense type of guy. He's a team-first guy. When he came to Philadelphia, something changed in that clubhouse. He's one of the best leaders in Major League Baseball, best teammates. He's revered around Major League Baseball to where I could certainly see him getting annoyed with Nick Castellanos doing the things that he did. Because when Nick Castellanos came to Philly, his mindset was always he should be treated like the superstars. He got paid like a superstar, not like Trey Turner, because Trey Turner obviously makes $300 million, similar to Bryce Harper, but he was making a decent amount of money to where I think the whole defensive change situation in Castellanos' head. Now, I'm just thinking out loud. I have no idea if this is true or not. This is just my opinion. When he got taken out of the game, he's probably thinking, well, you never took Trey Turner out of the game when he was struggling defensively in 23, 24. Why are you doing it to me? Me personally, I think that's the wrong mindset to have. Your mindset should be to help the team win ball games, to where Johan Rojas was on the roster at the time. We all know the Johan Rojas story. He's not a great hitter, but he's still one of the best defensive outfielders in baseball. And in a huge outfield like Miami, it just makes sense to where you have that defensive change. Now, you could also look at from the angle of Castellanos, where it's like, that was the first time Rob Thompson has ever done that, swapped out Nick Castellanos for defensive purposes in the entire 4-year run in Philadelphia. And to do it when his family is in attendance, I think you have to have a little bit better feel for that. Now, again, major league player making $20 million should not have that type of reaction to basically cuss out the manager and pop a Presidente beer on in the dugout, talking to him, degrading him. So, like, I think there was fault on both ends, but of course, the main fault lies with Nick Castellanos. And then the next question that they asked Kyle Schwarber was Nick Castellanos a distraction? And for as well-spoken, well-media trained as Kyle Schwarber is, he struggled to answer that question. He went on a tangent of, well, we got to the Dodgers, we lost a couple of close games, it is what it is. That wasn't the question. So I think the pause and the kind of deflecting and pushing it to other areas of the season kind of tells you everything you need to know to where maybe Nick Castellanos was a detriment to this clubhouse. Maybe everyone in Philadelphia is kind of happy to see him go. I still think they like him as a person because he is a great person. And I'm going to get into a story that proves that later in the episode. But yeah, it's just like there's a weird energy around it to where if Nick Castellanos, if the report by Matt Gale wasn't accurate and he was really a great teammate through his entire year, wouldn't you think more players would stand up and kind of be like, no, this isn't true? Or even in the earlier stages of the offseason when it was pretty prevalent that the Phillies weren't going to bring Nick Castellanos back, wouldn't you think a Harper would stand up and say something to Turner, or Schwarber, or JT? Crickets, right? So I don't know, kind of the non-response or the non-speaking up kind of speaks for itself, in my opinion. And the Miami incident. So basically, I already got that covered in the original Nick Castellanos got released video, but there was some audio taken. Someone on Twitter went back to the game, and you can hear screaming in the dugout. Now, I don't know if this was Nick Castellanos. I don't know if it was a fan. I don't know who it was. But from what I could depict from the video, I heard, "I have family here, mother blank." That has to be Nick Castellanos, right? Now, again, I don't know, so I'm not saying this is true verbatim, but it would make sense, right, that the whole incident that happened was because Nick Castellanos' family was in attendance. So in Nick Castellanos' head, maybe he felt disrespected to where the first time you pull me for defensive reasons in front of Miami, in front of my family, kind of a weird move, a weird timing move by Rob Thompson. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure none of his family would be like, why is he getting pulled out for defensive purposes? Because they're just happy to see him. He's made $100 million plus, signed a 4-year, $64 million deal with Cincinnati before he opted out. Nick Castellanos is a really good Major League Baseball player in the sense of totality of the average major leaguer. But there's ego, there's pride. So I would understand why a person of Nick Castellanos' mentality would be upset. But the fact that you would scream that in Miami, knowing the echo, if you ever seen a game at Lone Depot Park, there's no one in attendance, to where I feel like more people would have heard that and it would have kind of gotten out to where that was the story. But looking back on it, Nick Castellanos was ready to speak on the entire situation the day after, but he was instructed by the Phillies PR team to not speak about it. But I have family here, mother blank. Kind of insane to say, to where apparently Kyle Schwarber and JT had to hold Nick Castellanos back, tell him to go back into the clubhouse, calm down. He had the beer in his hand. They took it away from him before he had a chance for it to be seen on national television because it is a rule in Major League Baseball. Obviously, players can't have open alcohol containers there, to where Major League Baseball could have suspended him. But they nipped that under the rug to where I think he kind of had to do that because you saw how the Philadelphia media took that story and ran with it. It was a 3-month thing, and we didn't even know the entire story. If the whole story came out, I think Nick Castellanos would have probably got released in like a week or two, just based on what the Philadelphia media would have done. And just kind of their goal is to get clicks and bait. They don't really care. Now, of course, I think they want the Phillies to win, but they rather get more engagement. And letting that story kind of get out if they knew everything, they would do that under the notion that it would probably disrupt the team and their chances of winning a World Series, which it still might have done. I think the pudding is going to be in the cake in the 2026 season because if the boys start having fun again, they have a deep run in October. You could look back at this and be like, maybe Nick Castellanos was the problem. Maybe getting a guy like that out of the clubhouse lets the players play free, play loose, play for each other. Because I do think they like Nick Castellanos. I do think they ride for him. But it's like at some point you can only ride for someone so long before it gets old, gets annoying, gets like, okay, dude, it's time for you to go. Now, is Castellanos being portrayed by the media unfairly? I don't I don't know, like, because I don't know what's true, I don't know what's not. I mean, I know Philadelphia media runs with it, but the Major League Baseball media kinda has done it as well, to where I know Jackson Merrill got interviewed today, and they asked him about, Nick Castellanos coming to the clubhouse, how's he gonna fit in? And he gave a good response. He said, "Whatever happened in Philadelphia happened in Philadelphia. That's there. We are the San Diego Padres." To where he is kind of acknowledging something went wrong without knowing for sure. So it's kind of like I don't know. It's an interesting response, but they're ready to welcome Nick Castellanos, obviously, right? Because they signed him. What else are you going to say? Nah, we don't really want that guy in our clubhouse. Well, then he wouldn't be on the team. So I want to give a quote that came from Otto Kemp's wife. Believe it was yesterday on social media, maybe 2 days ago, portraying Castellanos in a more positive light. So she writes on her Instagram story, not many people know this, but right when Otto was moved up, Nick offered us a place to stay in their home. They had a full house with a toddler and a newborn, but didn't hesitate for a second to bring us in. I would come home to Jess cooking for everyone, followed by a Toy Story marathon with little Otto, baby Kobe, and Liam. Jess and Nick treated us like family, and I hope one day I can do the same for someone else. Thank you for guiding Otto and giving us a home away from home. Love you and thank you, Casty fam. A great story, right? Like just a genuinely good dude move to where I think Castellanos is just an interesting guy to where he has a really good heart. I just think sometimes he lets his emotions get the best of him. I think he thinks he's better than what he is. And in a way, for a Major League Baseball player, you kind of have to believe that. You have to believe you're the best on the field to succeed. Because if you don't have confidence, you don't have anything. I just think he did it in the wrong way to where he made his feelings and opinions way too known. There's certain things you just bottle up or handle behind closed doors, and Nick Castellanos didn't do that. But even it was, I believe, the night before game one or a couple nights before game one against the Dodgers, someone on the team hosted the entire team, and Nick Castellanos is there and having a good old time to where if Nick Castellanos was really, really a problem in the clubhouse, would he be there? Maybe they just invited him so it's not a story. I don't really know. But overall, I think the media has portrayed it as the media usually does. It's probably a little bit too exaggerated, but then again, I look at the Kyle Schwarber comments to where it's kind of like he just doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to see how the clubhouse interacts this year. And if it's a more lighthearted, fun, goofy mood to where it was in 22, 23, and even in 24, maybe we're going to get our answer there. But I said this in the Castellanos releasing video. I think he's a good dude. I just think sometimes he handles things the wrong way. We're all human beings, but at heart and what he did for Otto, bringing in that young kid, welcoming someone into their home, it's a great move. And I think Nick Castellanos is a really good dude. I just think certain things got overblown, certain things like didn't get overblown. Like, it is what it is. Similar to what Kyle Schwarber said, it is what it is. Now, my last point, two more points. Will Castellanos leaving improve the clubhouse? Maybe. I don't know. Because clubhouse like chemistry, I feel like gets overblown in Major League Baseball because winning cures all. Like, if you're winning baseball games, there's never going to be a clubhouse problem. It really just stems from if you're losing games, certain things come out. Obviously, when you're losing, more people are agitated. The true side of someone comes out when they're struggling, right? To where if you're winning, you could fake it till you make it because there's no point of you causing a problem. But if you're losing, then the true side comes out. So I don't know. It just depends on how the Phillies play, in my opinion, because if they get off to a bad start, I'm sure some things are going to come out about the clubhouse. Like, maybe this core is aging. Maybe people are getting tired with the Philadelphia media. But if they start winning, things are going to be okay. I really think the proof of the pudding will come in the playoffs because with this Philadelphia Phillies team, and what I've noticed is they play so tight. Alec Boehm even said it after game 2 of the National League Division Series. He was like, I don't know. We get up there, the moment, the fans, we're pressing too hard. I don't really know what happens in that moment, which I think that quote was underplayed. Like, that's genuinely insane. He's basically telling you the moment is too big for him. But it's not just him. It's Harper, it's Turner, it's Schwarber, to where the initial buzz of Red October in 22, 23, it was like a euphoric fever dream to where you just were playing like you don't know what to expect. You just were experiencing it for the first time. But then when that Diamondback series hit game 6 and game 7, a shift happened in this franchise. Citizens Bank Park turned into crickets. You could hear a pin drop to where it flipped on them. Now, a championship team, if they're a championship team, which the Phillies haven't been yet, should be able to take that and go use it as motivation to get that Red October crowd back to where it needs to be. Because I was in the crowd for game 2 of the National League Division Series. It was awful. It was booing Johan Duran when he came in, not booing him, booing them for doing the entrance, which was genuinely insane. Have a freaking feel. But then in the ninth inning, when we started to come back, it turned into bedlam at the bank again, to where maybe Nick Castellanos leaving, getting a quote unquote clubhouse cancer out, maybe makes the players play a little bit more free. Because in my opinion, the expectations for the Philadelphia Phillies are at its lowest for this current core throughout the Philadelphia media. Major League Baseball, throughout the game, they still think the Phillies have a chance to win a World Series, and they're right. But the media is just always like, wake me up in October. These guys are playoff chokers. To where, in my opinion, I think they should play free and loose because there's no expectations. Because if they get bounced out in the first round again, no one's going to be surprised. No one's going to be shocked if they're swinging at pitches in the dirt. The top 3 hitters don't contribute. Will we be pissed? Absolutely. But will we be shocked? Absolutely not. So I think this year they have a real chance to play free, play loose, and just embrace the moment, dude. Like, it is not a, what's the word, detriment to have a stadium like Citizens Bank Park. You got to look at the potential high. Of course, the low is tough when you're getting booed, the stadium's quiet, everyone is on edge. It's just a bad place to be. But once swing in the back and turn that into bedlam at the bank again, to where they need to go back to just playing ball, embracing the moment, and being thankful for the opportunity. We'll see if they do that. I have no idea. And then the last point is I think there's going to be a tell-all podcast from Nick Castellanos. I don't think he was going to do it right away because he still wants to get on a major league team. But if he's playing well with San Diego and Mookie Betts invites him back onto the podcast, check that episode out. They recorded in September. Great stuff from Castellanos. Just like the way he thinks about things, the baseball, the conversation was great. To where I could definitely see Nick Castellanos just telling his side of the story. The thing about Nick Castellanos is I don't think he's going to lie. I think he's going to be very authentic in what he says, to where we're just going to have to take it for our opinion, to where his displeasures with Rob Thompson, the incident in Miami, his point of view, and I would be very excited for that episode. So I feel like that's coming in the coming months. So we'll see about that, but that's going to do it for this episode of Baseball for Maniacs. Nick Castellanos to the San Diego Padres on a 1-year deal. Let me know your guys' thoughts. You think if it's a good move, you think if it's a bad move, just let me know. And go Phils, and that'll do it for today.